Setups on the F1 game are daunting. There's so many things you can change. A good setup can gain you half a second and a bad setup can lose you half a second or even more. Now, I'm not a professional engineer, but I know how to change the setup in a way that I can be more confident in the car. So after this video, my goal is that you have the knowledge to start messing with the setup yourself and gain that extra lap time that you are looking for. I'll also go into some things that seem to work on this game, the F1 26 DLC, but obviously the game's quite new, so there's definitely some new metas that are still yet to be found. Now, before I go and explain every single setting to you, there's some fundamentals that you need to keep in mind when you start messing with the setup. Especially when you don't know what all these things do. The first thing I'd recommend is don't change everything at once. Because if you change one thing, you can then go on track and you can feel that actual change. And then you can look at the time if that's actually a better change or a worse. But this way you will also learn to feel the car and feel the differences in the settings that you will make. Another thing is, at first you never know how large an impact has. As you can see, I can go from 50 to 40. Now, how big is that difference? If you make a change, I would always recommend that you can also go up. You wanted lower front wing, you can go to 46, for example, or 40. And then you have a lot of room that you can go to 45. This way you will also figure out the impact of a certain change. Okay, that's some basic fundamentals out the way. First, we're going to take a look at the default setups. If you don't have a chance to change the setup in this game, we want a higher downforce setup because you can open the wings and then you basically have 0-0 wings on the straight. That is why in the corners it's either maximum downforce or increased downforce. You can also change the front brake bias and on-throttle differential in the race to add more rotation. We'll get into what the setting actually does. But you can lower the on throttle for more rotation, higher it for more traction, and then a front brake bias. You can lower it if you want more rotation on the brakes, and you can higher it if you want less rotation on the brakes. Now let's get into every setting, what it does, what it changes, and why you might change a certain thing. These are from my experience with the F1 game. I'm not a professional engineer, nor can I exactly explain sometimes what the science behind it is, but I know what it does in the game, all right? So that's the most important thing, and that's what I want to try and teach you today. So at the start, aerodynamics, because the fuel load, you will always want the least amount of possible while still getting through your lap or your race. Then into the aerodynamics, the start of a setup. Now, as I just said, in the F1 26 game, you can run higher wings because when you open the front wing and the rear wing with straight mode, you will basically have 0-0 wings anyway, so you can just focus on the corners. Now, in this game, you will see a lot of front wing and a much lower rear wing, a really big wing gap. Now, what does this do? The higher the front wing, the more turn-in you will get. The higher the rear wing, the more stability you will get at the cost of straight line speed, which means the lower the wings are, the higher the top speed is, but you will have more trouble going through the corners. So your corner performance, you will have to brake earlier with a lower wings because you will have less stopping power and less grip on the ground. You will see a lot of front wing and a really low rear wing because the cars are understeery, and this way the car won't be as understeery because you have a lot of turn-in from the front wing. Alright, it used to be the main important thing for straight line speed, but now you have straight mode available and it is less important. That's why the wings are much higher. And that's why, for example, you can see here in Austria 50-15. You can even see in Jeddah 50-0 wings. If I want to change this, if I think the car is very unstable in every part of the corner always, I can go down on the front wing or I can increase the rear wing. But higher wing will mean less straight line speed. Okay, and then let's get into the transmission. You have an on throttle different adjustment and off throttle different adjustment. Now you already see on throttle and off throttle. Let's start with the on throttle. This is one of the things you can change in the bottom right. The higher this is, the more locked both rear tires are when you are going on throttle. That means one wheel cannot spin faster than the other wheel if there's more grip on the right hand side, basically. Which means that the lower this is, the more unlocked it is, the more they can spin, which means that you will have more rotation on throttle. It's a combination between the lower, the more rotation you have on throttle, the higher, the more traction you have. Because if the wheels spin at the same time, you will have better traction in this game. That's why in the F1 25 game, of course this is still the F125 game, you saw a lot of 100. This game you still see a lot of 100, and I still think that 100 is the best, but I've also seen some people go lower, and you can definitely go to 60 or 80 in this game if you want that extra rotation. Now for the off throttle, it also has to do with rotation. This is just how locked the tires are when you are off the throttle, so you don't have any throttle enabled, you are going through the corner itself. The off throttle adjustment and the front brake bias, they are tied together. Now you can change the front brake bias, but you cannot change the diff off throttle in race. Now what does off throttle do? Basically the lower this off throttle is, the more the car will turn when you are off the throttle. So either you're on the brakes or just off the throttle or brakes, the car will turn a lot. Now if this is really locked, the car will not turn at all. And the reason I'm saying this ties in together with the front brake bias is because when you are on the brakes, off the throttle, and you are turning into a corner, if you have a really low off throttle and a really high front brake bias, you can kind of counter each other. I will explain the front brake bias. Now what works in this game, we have seen that still a high off throttle works. It also worked in F125. Now you could run a lot lower. In this game you have to run almost 57. You also saw, I think this setup had 59 brake bias. This was never anywhere near that you used in F125, and now in the F126 game you see 59, 58, 57. You can go lower, but the rest of the setup of course ties together as one. Now for this F126 game, I think the range is between 30 and 50%. If you go too high on the off throttle, you will not have any rotation and you will have a lot of stability, but you will just lose time because the car is not rotating through a corner. So then, because we have just been talking about the front brake bias, I'm not going from left to right, I will just explain the front brake bias next. Front brake bias means where is the weight of the car? Is it at the front or the rear of the car when you are braking? Now you have to understand, going through a corner, weight affects the car a lot. If you're going through a hairpin, for example, and the weight is at the rear of the car, you understand that the rear will rotate the car more. Now if the weight is at the front of the car, you will understand that the car will not turn at all. And that's basically the front brake bias adjustment. The higher this is, the more it is to the front, which is why the car will not turn at all, or it will turn too much. And this is in braking. If you have a heavy braking zone and you notice that when you are steering in, you lose the rear, you can try upping the front brake bias so that there's more weight to the front of the car will turn less and will feel more stable. Now it's always a compromise, because the more stable the car is, the less the car turns and the less overall performance you have. But still, you want to be confident in the car. If you don't feel confident with a brake bias too low, you just have to up it and you just have to go with it. Of course, you can still practice your braking and still practice your inputs. Some people are very good with their inputs and very precise, and they can have a really low front brake bias. This is where skill comes in, of course, but don't lie to yourself. If you cannot handle the brake bias, just go up one. Because we're already at the brakes, we're going to talk about the brake pressure. This is probably the easiest one. As you can see above me, this is one with the correct explanation. Brake pressure determines the maximum potential braking power of the vehicle. Which means that if I'm locking up a lot and if I get a lot of problems with braking, that I cannot even go full brakes, especially in this game, the braking is very sensitive. And that is why this is maybe the first game that you can go lower with 99, 98 and 97. Now, I usually don't like it. I'd rather learn to push the brakes less. But of course, if you have the maximum braking power, you will have the maximum performance from the brakes. Now, of course, if you can lower this and be more confident on the brakes, and then that will make you more faster, then of course you can lower it. And also another thing that might be tire wear. Of course, the brake temperature has effect on the tire wear that you get. So if you lower this, your overall brake temperature might be a little lower, which then will lead to a little less tire wear. That's the theory behind it. I think 100 still works fine, and you will just have to work your way around it, get used to the brakes. But that's the braking pressure for you. Then we're gonna get into the suspension geometry, and no one really wants to talk about this. I'm also gonna go not really in depth with it because no one talks about it. I've never really touched it. It seems like we all decide at the start of this game what is the best. And in F125, left was the best. But I'm gonna explain the front toe and the rear toe. Basically, if you need some extra turning, then you can up the front toe, and upping the rear toe will basically do the opposite effect. But if you are starting out with setups, I wouldn't mess with it. I also never mess with it. You can try things out for yourself, but the reason most people don't mess with it is because of tire wear. And I think if you are changing stuff here, it will have a negative effect on tire wear. If you want more initial turn in, you can get it from other places as well. You can get it from the main suspension, and it will also make it easier for you if you are changing stuff in the setup and you do not have to care about one more thing. That's basically what I can say about the suspension geometry. Not that much. All right. Then we're gonna get into the suspension. And the suspension and aerodynamics, these are basically the core of the setup. Now, as you can see here, it's a little bit different than what we're used to, but it still kind of looks like the F125 setup. Let me first explain what each and one of these do for you, and then I will get into what works in this game and what doesn't. So, front suspension and rear suspension. You can see soft and firm. Soft is lower and firm is higher. I see the suspension here as initial turn-in of the car. And I see the roll bar as mid-corner rotating performance. Let's put it like that. Which means is initial turn-in of the car. If I go higher on the rear suspension, I will have more initial turn-in of the car. If I go lower on the front suspension, I will have more initial turn-in of the car. So the main reason why this is at 41 in these games is, I think, straight line speed. It's because the more firmer the suspension of the car, as you can see the car here above me, the more firm that is, the less the wheels will bounce when you are going on the straight, and you will really notice the difference in straight line speed. But occasionally I've seen it go a little bit lower. As a main baseline, I think 41 is still very good in this game, just like F125. And then the rear suspension, you can go much higher than last game. 41.1 was really a meta. Now in this game, I think you can definitely go higher in the rear suspension. So if you want more initial turn-in, it makes it quite easy for you. Just go and lower if you want less initial turn-in, and higher if you want more initial turn-in. To make it easy for yourself, that's how I view it. And then the roll bar will really affect the traction you also have out of a corner and the mid-cornering performance. Now, as you can see in this setup, it is at 21.21. Now, what is the exact difference between 1.1 and 21.21? It is softer and more firm. Now, what it exactly does for the roll bar, I am not even gonna lie. I just know that if you go 121, this is the most aggressive rotating you can get from the roll bars, but it will really hamper the traction on your exit. I have also noticed if you go lower on the rear anti-roll bar, you will have better tire wear. I'm really curious to see if 21.21 has an impact on tire wear compared to a 1.1, but in rotating the car it does not have any impact on the car. If I want more rotation, I can up the rear or lower the front, and if I want less rotation and more stability, then I can lower the rear wing. You can also go inverted to have more confidence. Basically, this will give you a lot of confidence in traction and everything, but it will just feel like a boat. If you go 21.1, you will really feel like a boat. That's basically the negative effect of it. So that's why you will then need to get the turn-in power from another place, like the wings. I hope these ones are clear. These ones are the things that you will be messing with the most if you are changing setups, especially at the start, the suspension and the aerodynamics of the car. These are the things that you will change most. You can always, off throttle is also quite a big thing to try and find extra performance. I never really tried that much with the on throttle, but I think here is where you find the most time. Of course, perfecting the setup will come with the different settings as well and everything working together. So then we're going to go into ride height of the car. Now, ride height is basically how high the car is off the ground. The lower the ride height, the more you might bottom out over the curbs. And the reason this is higher in the F126 than in the 25 cars is because you can bottom out more easily with these small and nimble cars. Now, the reason you might want to go lower is because the lower it is, the more it sucks into the ground. So in theory, you will have more performance as it sucks more into the ground. But then if you hit a curb and you cannot make the corner faster, the benefit of really going lower goes away. So that's why you have to go the lowest you can, but still being able to go over the curbs. Now also be mindful in changing the ride height. So if you, for example, only change the rear ride height, you can now see the front ride height is a little lower than the rear ride height, which means that the car is like this. It will mean the car will go more like this, and that will have an effect going through the corners, and it will also give you more or less straight line speed. Now if it's more straight, it will give you a little bit more straight line speed. Now I'm also not gonna lie, I'm not a professional with the ride height. I still have yet to understand it completely, what it actually does in the cornering. But in the straight line speed, I've noticed if you have a gap like this, you will have more straight line speed. At the start, I wouldn't mess with it too much. Okay, brakes we have already had. So then we're gonna get into the tires, the last thing. And I've heard that the tires do not really simulate real life. But in the game, we're gonna talk about in the game here. As you can see here, we can inflate the tires. We can put more air in the tires. Just like if you are pumping up the tire of your car or your bicycle, you can put more air in the tire. More air in the tires means that the tire is more flat and will have less surface area touching the ground. If the tire is not completely full, the tire will have more contact on the ground. And the more the tire contacts the ground, the more grip you will have and the more responsiveness the car will have. Meaning, if the front tires are low and the rear tires are low, you will have the most optimal grip from the tires. Now, if this is really high, you have the least amount of grip. But because the tire is more inflated and less touching the ground, it will have more straight line speed. So that is the compromise that you make. Now in last games, F1 25, you saw front tires are really high, so we can get the most straight line speed from them. And then the rear can give you the most stability possible. Because if the rear tires have more grip than the front tires, it will create stability. The lower the tire pressures are, the more temperature it will also put in the tire, which then will lead to more tire wear in theory. Now, I've also noticed that if you have more grip in the rear tires, you will slide around less on traction, which then will lead to better tire wear. So play around with it, even if the temperature skyrockets. I don't know if this will be a thing this game. Even then, sometimes it might still be faster and might not even be worse for your tire wear. But you do have to keep in mind that there is an optimal tire temperature window also in the game. Alright, so that is basically it. I think with this information, you will be able to start messing with the setups yourself. Remember the fundamentals that I said at the start. Do not change everything at once. Allow yourself to learn the changes in the car. I hope you guys learned something. If you did, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe. Now, if you're still struggling with the battery management, in your screen there's a video of me explaining how to manage and use the ERS. Go ahead and watch it, and I'll see you guys next time.